Good morning, or good afternoon, or good evening, depending where you are. And welcome to today's Cichlids and Coffee live stream. Hope you're drinking out of one of these. And welcome everybody that's already here. I love that you folks get here early and have your chats. Let's see, we have Elijah Davis. Elijah, looks like you were first, is that right? If you would like some stickers, just go ahead and let me know, and I will get some over to you. And good morning, Humble Rasta, James Green, and Greg Pelfrey. Good morning, Greg. And who else we have here? UFC Guru, most underrated fish keeping channel. Thank you, my friend. I appreciate that greatly. And Chai 3F R34P, good morning to you as well. Hey, Po Siwi, good to see you. Marty, hello, Marty. Hope you're doing well. And R Baglio, hello, my friend. Let's see, Pat and Jess Cole. Pat and Jess Cole, we're doing okay. We're still having some smoke, but it's sure better than it was a week ago. Thank you for asking. And let's see here. Hey, Kevin. Kevin Green is here. More on Kevin later. And hello, Anthony Shepard and GP. Hey, GP. I'm glad you can make it. Last week, I think GP had some Wi-Fi issues. Hey, Candy. Good to see you, Candy. Daryl, Rogers, Aquarium, and John Larson. Hello, John. So let's go ahead and get underway here. I appreciate all of you who are here today. Looks like we have about a little over 50 folks on. I'm sure that will increase as we go along. And I guess let's go ahead and officially start this with the dropping logo. If you're new to the channel and you like to always be learning like me, don't forget to hit this subscribe and bell, and that way you'll always get informed. You'll always be in the loop of getting new information, new uploads, and of course when I go live. Also, some of you have asked how you can how to support the channel. That's very appreciated that you asked that, and you can do that with. You can use my link, my Amazon link that you can see up here, and to get to Amazon, whether you buy things from my store or anywhere on Amazon, the channel gets a credit, doesn't increase your price at all. You can also go to Teespring and pick up things like mugs and t-shirts and hoodies, and I'm working on a hat right now, things like that. So that's the end of the commercial, but I appreciate those of you who support the channel. You can also support the channel, of course, with super chats. At the bottom of the chat, it gives you an option where you can throw some money. And I used to use the analogy of the pole dancer, but I'm not going to do that. So let's talk about what's been going on the week that was here. And I had a few videos here that got released, and one of them was on the plants. And as you can see, I gave in, and I had to take that plant that was sent to me by Elite Cichlids. They sent me this brand new plant that had like 3 or 4 different. You can see it here. I think you can see it here, and it's just a beautiful combination of different kinds of textures and colors and things. And so it sort of forced my hand into putting the plants back in, and so I had no real, I had no choice. I had to go with it. So, so I'm back to having a little bit of green in the tank, and at any rate, I'd love to have, and some of you have asked me about that, and some of you comment about that, like, how come you don't have live plants? And anyone who has African cichlids, and I'm not sure if this is the case with other cichlids, Central American, right, New World cichlids, South American cichlids, but certainly African cichlids. Even with Anubias, which I've been told by reputable and trusted folks out there that are bitter to fish and that they don't like them, they still, once my fish put on size, they tore my Anubias apart. And I had this big long experiment. It took quite a few hours, and well over $100 in plants. My tank looked beautiful. It was a 135 gallon that I had before. It looked beautiful. It had these big, beautiful Anubias, and I had everything from the nanos all the way up to the big Anubias. And I took the time and I glued them to core, and using your basic super glue, which is non-toxic once it dries right. And it was just a nightmare. So this is why I'm forced to use these plastic plants. Fortunately, we have an organization like Elite Cichlids that makes these beautiful looking artificial plants. If you go to Elite Cichlids and use the Ben, move this table here, move the Ben, tell them that Ben Ochart sent you, or Ben O Cichlid, they give you a discount. Just tell them you want the Ben Ochart discount. So also we had a video on choosing the right filtration, which kind of segues into today's segment, but it's like what the pros and cons of different kinds of filters. And I personally like them all. I think they all have a place in the hobby. I love the out of sight and quietness of a canister when it's correctly set up and it's nice and quiet. I like that, and I also love the capacity, the media capacity of canisters, which you really can't get in something like a hang-on back unless you want to keep your tank 3 feet from the wall. And but I also like hang-on back filters. I love the ease of the ease with which you work with them. They're sort of right at chest level depending on where your tank is set up, and they do provide flexibility. Some of them are larger than others, so you can put different media in there. Very easy to work on. And I also like them because they create a cascade of water into the tank, so they're breaking up the surface, so you're getting a lot of oxygen, and that's very important. Also, if you put the intake low in the tank, it's going to pull some of the lower oxygen from the bottom, and lower oxygen-rich water, it's going to pull it up and then cycle it through, and so you'll have a nice even amount of oxygen throughout the tank, and you'll also get water movement because of the water cascading in. So not as much movement, though, if you were to take the outputs of a strong, like a fluval output from a fluval canister, or even a Sun 3000 or a Sun 704B. If you take the outputs and you put them slightly out of the water, they will create a tremendous stream across the top of the water, and a lot of surface tension breakup, and a lot of oxygenation, a lot of escaping of the waste and the gas, right? The bad gas, and allowing good oxygen to come in. So you can also use the outputs of your canister filters for that as well. So canisters and HOBs are great. Sponge filters, they're inexpensive. I love that Expert Matic that I did a video on, and that is another video I have coming up. If you see here on the list, there's a video coming up right here. There's a video coming up on how I service the Expert Matic, and how that filter will tell you, it actually tells you when it's time to be serviced. And if you have an Expert Matic, or if you're thinking about getting a filter like that attaches to the side of the tank, you get the benefits of a sponge filter. You get good water movement because of the output. It works a lot like a like a moderately powered power head, and you also get that venturi creating oxygen, creating bubbles that are breaking the surface and creating oxygenating the tank. So you're getting a lot of benefits from that kind of a filter, and you'll see in that video that's coming up how you can service that filter in about 2 minutes. It's like Well, I'm exaggerating. 20 minutes, and you have that filter completely serviced. So if you had, let's say, a 40-gallon, let's say you had some breeders, 40-gallon breeders, even 20-gallon, that would be an easy filter to have popped in there. And some of you don't like the look, don't like to have this object hanging in the tank, and it is admittedly thicker than wider and more visible than the input and outputs of a canister and or a hang-on back filter. But at any rate, I've really been impressed with that filter. I know that there's a Cichlids makes one from Italy called a Shark. It's a little bit more expensive. I'm not really sure if it's that much better. I'm sure it's well constructed, but I know John over at the KG Tropicals talked about it. Not to be mistaken with KG Cichlids, which is Kevin Green's channel. So I also have a tour of a aquarium store that I've been driving by for years. I've been driving by this aquarium store, but it's way off in Hollywood, close to where I actually grew up. And whenever we would drive by it, we were either in a hurry to go somewhere, or hurrying back home, or it was closed. It was too late. Well, we finally drove by it and noticed it was open, and my very patient wife. I convinced her to let's pull over, and she stayed in the car and text and was on Facebook, I guess, or whatever. And I went inside and got to know the owner, and took some video. And he had some crazy stuff in there. You can see right here the thumbnail. Insane, beautiful saltwater collection, and a very nice collection of freshwater fish as well, all in a relatively small space. It amazes me how much these aquarium stores can pack into a relatively small space. So that was a fun trip and a fun walkthrough. So watch for that video, and I also have a video on how the steps that I take. The one that's the furthest away here is a video that's coming up on how I move fish from quarantine to the main tank, and the subject of quarantine in general. Why I quarantine, how long do I quarantine, what do I look for, when do I feel it's time to move them to the main tank. These topics all about quarantine are going to be touched on in that video. So watch for that video. These will be coming out. There'll be one coming out tomorrow, and then one on Wednesday, and then one this coming, a week from tomorrow. You probably notice I've gone from 3 videos and a live stream to 2 videos and a live stream, and so I've cut it back on purpose, only because I'm having to do so much connected to this move. The move is it's coming up. It's looming. We have the truck already reserved. Allied Moving Services, I think they're called. They're going to be here the 30th of October to take all our stuff and drive it to Nashville. So it's getting real close. Some good news on that. I have found a home for Photoshop for my red cap and his tank buddies, the other Lethrinops that are in there, and you can see them here, and it's a good thing. I was kind of worried about what was going to happen with that fish, and it's a very dear fish to me, and I didn't want to take him cross country. I didn't want to stress him out with that, and so interestingly enough, the same person that adopted a frontosa that I used to have is going to be taking this guy, and You can see him here, Photoshop, and that will be Kevin Green. Kevin Green is going to be taking the 60-gallon tank, which contains the Lethrinops group, as well as one female, which is what I think keeps old Photoshop nice and colorful. And there's also a bushy-nosed pleco in there, a small Synodontis, and a red shoulder, and also a gar, which I believe is a female gar. So he'll be getting the tank, 2 Sun 302s, a hang-on back filter, and I'll probably throw in an Eheim heater if he wants that. So at any rate, so that's taken care of, and that takes a load off my mind. And because he's going to be going to a good home, they're all going to be going to a good home. So let me catch up here on the chat. And again, welcome to those of you who came in a little late. Welcome to everybody. Welcome to my wonderful moderators, the best on YouTube, I always say. So the cross-country trip is going to be quite a trip. I mean, we're going to be going from, of course, we're using a moving service for the heavy stuff, but I'm going to be driving. I'm thinking about driving some stuff over to Arizona, and driving some of the fish over to the Cichlid Shack in Arizona. I'm debating whether to do that or to try and sell off as many fish as I can, and then work a deal out with Nolan at Nolan's Aquarium over in Santa Ana. So I'm kind of going back and forth and between it, but I think I'm going to make a stop at the Cichlid Shack in Arizona for sure, because as you can see on the map, it's actually on the way, and I'd like to meet James in person, and that'll be about a 5-hour trip, and then we'll go ahead and continue the trip. And when I say we, those of you who remember from the drawing, my daughter Mallory, my youngest daughter, will be going with us on the trip, and then once we get there, there is a chance, and this is just throwing stuff around and just a comment here and a comment there, but I might be able to do something with the Cichlid with the Aquarium Co-op in Nashville on the setting up of the fish room. Maybe get some advice, maybe do things like that. The Aquarium Co-op, of course, I'm wearing Murph. Those of you familiar with Murph the Puffer. I think he's the official mascot of the Aquarium Co-op. And so it looks like somebody jumped in with a super chat, and Dr. Biscuit, hey Ben, thanks for answering all my emails. Very helpful. You're welcome. You're welcome for that. And sometimes I'm a little slow getting back to you folks because I have a tremendous amount going on. And some of you reach out to me on Instagram, some of you on Facebook, and some of you just email me directly at the ben.o.cichlid@gmail. You're totally welcome to email me with questions. I'm happy to tackle them. But over the next 6 to 8 weeks, just realize that I may not be getting back to you as quickly as I'd like to, only because of everything that's going on. But thank you, Dr. Biscuit. My pleasure. I hope that what I told you worked out. I hope the advice was sound. And so sometimes, I get a question like, what's wrong with my fish? And there's a blurred picture attached, and it's like, I really, really want to help you, but I really can't diagnose it that way, or I'll get a general comment like, how many cichlids can I put in a 40-gallon? And I try and do my best, but I just need so much more data, and so anyway, and sometimes we have to go back and forth getting more data. But I try and help you guys out. Feel free to email me directly. I will get into a private conversation with you about your fish if you'd like to. And hey, Francie, thank you for that. Francie Royal jumps in, waving as you drive by. I need to make a trip up to the shack as well. Well, Francie, maybe you can be there when I'm going to be there. I'm going to be there on the first. I think if the trip goes the way it's planned right now, and between fires and last night's earthquake, and I think we're expecting flying honey badgers. Between all the things that have been happening out here in California, who knows? But, God willing, right? The creek don't rise and all that good stuff. I should be at the shack on the 1st of November. The 1st of November. I should be pulling in and possibly with some of the big boys, some of the big guys behind me here, and delivering them to James, who'll hold on to them for me and then ship them out or sell them depending on what I end up doing in Nashville. So maybe folks, we can all meet in Arizona. So that'd be kind of fun, actually. So let's take a quick look at the chat and see what you folks have been up to here. And let's see. And yes, for those of you who have asked, I am actually selling all of the tanks. Everything is for sale. The fish, everything is for sale. So if you're in Southern California and you're looking for some stuff, let me know. And so let's see here on the chat. Thank you, Kenny. I appreciate that, Kenny Howard. The information that you provide is top of the line. We love your time, effort, and energy. And hashtag Cichlid World Tank. Thank you for that. Very, very appreciated. And yeah, we had an earthquake last night, Donald, and it was in the high fours, and it woke me up. It was it was like someone took the house and gave it just a push, like really hard push. And of course, as you know, as a fish keeper, the first thing that you worry about is are my tanks sloshing around? Are they going to fall over? I don't have safety straps. The tanks are so wide and heavy that it would take like a 7.4 of a minute duration or more to maybe possibly knock them over. So anyway, maybe I'm being foolish. Maybe I should have them strapped. But this one is 2 feet deep, so it's got a very stable footprint. So it would really take something major to knock it over. So at any rate, let's get into today's topic, and I will get back to the chat in a second. John Larson, I really have to think hard about getting some of your fish because my tank is pretty full at the moment. Yeah, you don't. Man, I've seen fish over the years that I had to have them, and then when you look back and you're realistic about it, it doesn't make any sense because it's and so I've had to hold off and wait for the right time, and so that's happened to me in the past. And did I miss any super chats? I hope not. But thank you for those of you who have super chatted. And it looks like we're over 100 viewers. Welcome, everybody. Those of you who came in a little bit late, welcome to today's Cichlids and Coffee. Thank you to everybody who's been buying those coffee mugs. I've noticed there has been activity at the Teespring store. You folks are picking up some of those mugs. I'm going to take more pictures of the fish that I can put on mugs because, of course, I'm going to be selling a lot of them, and I want to kind of have this record of them on coffee mugs and drive my poor wife crazy with a cabinet full of fish coffee mugs. So, hey, Trent, thank you so much for that. Thank you so much for that super chat. Very appreciated. So let's get into today's topic. I want to talk with you a little bit about filtration and the idea of how much filtration. In the thumbnail of this particular live stream, you noticed that 60-gallon tank, has three filters on it, and I mean that's a lot of that's a lot of filtration. That's a lot of water movement, a lot of media that's being utilized, and I will say this: over the years, that tank has been the most stable of all my tanks. And when I had a bout of colimaris a while back, that tank, even though there was obvious cross-contamination between whether it was hoses or nets or things of that nature, that tank did not get one speck of colimaris, even though the other two tanks were ravaged by it. Were the fish that much hardier? Was it because of the filtration? Was it because, I don't know. All I know is that 60-gallon has been the Rock of Gibraltar. I mean, fish grow in there. You see Photoshop. I mean, he's a beautiful red cap Lethrinops, and his tank mates are all beautiful finnage, beautiful colors. And so, am I over-filtering that tank? Or perhaps do I have an optimum, have I dialed in, without really using any science or math, have I dialed in an optimum amount of water turnover and ratio of water to biomedia and water to filtration? I mean, who's put a pencil to this, right? Now, so we hear the topic, that topic thrown around sometimes. You can't have too much filtration. What do you folks think about that comment? You can't have too much filtration. I mean, share in the chat. I want to hear what you think about that. I mean, look, the waste that your fish are producing can provide the ammonia for only so much beneficial bacteria. So if you have 5 canisters and 2 hang-on backs, or 1 canister, you're still going to have the same amount of beneficial bacteria, because it's only going to live and thrive to the degree that it's being fed. Right? Am I right? So I guess one advantage of having several filters would be that you're spreading out the beneficial bacteria. So instead of, let's say, 50% in the tank and 50% in the filter, because keep in mind, your tank is the home of a tremendous amount of your beneficial bacteria, right? All the substrate, all the plants, the background, all of that is coated in beneficial bacteria. So that has, let's say that has 50%, and another 50% is spread out among whatever filter media you're using. And I'm just throwing this out there. So that 50%, let's say you had 5 canisters, right? Would you have 50% in the tank and then 10% in each of those canisters? I don't think it's that clean, right? It's not going to be that clean in nature. But it does tell us this: if you have multiple filters and you service one filter, the shock on your tank is going to be greatly reduced. The chance of upsetting your tank is going to be greatly reduced. As opposed to just say, let's say on the 100, my 100-gallon, the cichlid tank with the black sand and the black background in the oak stand. That tank has one Fluval FX6. If you're interested in buying that tank, it comes with a 704B. I'm keeping that Fluval. FYI. But that tank, when I service that Fluval, I make a point of not touching anything inside the tank, because it's going to be disruptive. It is the only filter. When I work on the 60, I can tear apart the hang-on back. I can tear apart one of the canister filters and do a 50%, 60% water change, and that tank is not going to have a hiccup because it's spread out so much. Do you follow me? So if you think that you can't filter too much because it'll continue to give you more beneficial bacteria, that's a misconception. You're only going to get the beneficial bacteria that your tank can support. However, by having more filtration, you will proportionally, you'll reduce the shock on your tank when you service some of those filters. Assuming you don't service them all at once, become overzealous, like brand new fish keepers, right? The number one mistake, over clean, restart the cycle, and kill everything off with ammonia. So we have to look at what's the motivating factor between, what's the motivation for adding a lot of filters? If you're adding them for more beneficial bacteria, no, that's not. Now, let's say you have an increase in stock. Let's say you add 6 new fish, and at the same time, you add a hang-on back. That might be wise. That might be a wise thing to do, because all of a sudden that hang-on back is going to share some of the load, and the extra ammonia that's being created by those fish can help populate that hang-on back very quickly. So that timing could be very, very good. Otherwise, if you're adding them for more beneficial bacteria, don't do it for that. However, you could add them to decrease the impact on the tank during maintenance, to give you redundancy in the event that one filter fails. And that happens, right? The best made filters, I don't care, Eheim, Fluval, your inexpensive filters, your Suns, your hang-on backs, they fail, they crash. Motor blows out, stuff happens. Having those other filters on there helps you don't miss a beat, right? If the hang-on back, if the Marineland 400, right, that dual bio wheel on that 60 gallon was to fail, that tank probably wouldn't miss a beat. If the Fluval fails on my 100, man, I'm running like a chicken without a head to get that media into a backup Sun 704 that I have, and moving the outputs and getting the hoses and getting it all turned over until I can get that Fluval fixed. That happened to me. And so I had to stuff all those sponges and media into that 704 and shove some of the sponges into a quarantine tank just to keep them kind of alive. And anyway, so at any rate, the point I'm making here is that multiple filtration will give you benefits of redundancy and backup, spreading out the beneficial bacteria so you reduce the impact during servicing, and you'll get more water polishing. So how far do you take it? I have a friend on YouTube that has 5, maybe 6 canisters on his 300 gallon. 6 big canisters on his 300 gallon. I don't know. I think that you go to the point where your water and your test results are really good, really, really good. And then at that point, kind of dial it back a little bit, because you don't need all the extra electricity bill. You don't need. So I would probably take a tank I would take a tank to where I finally have the water. The water looks clear and crisp, and my test results are good. I got it all dialed in, and then add a hang on back, just to give me that extra redundancy, that extra edge. I think, again, looking at the configuration, looking at the combination of things I have right now, I really think, all things said, that double canister with the hang on back for a tank under 100 gallons is a real good combination. Two medium, let's say a 60-gallon tank or 75, something like that. Two medium strength, medium GPH, right? Canisters. You don't need to go 704Bs. You can go 404s or even 302s, or maybe a mid-size, maybe an Eheim Classic, a couple Eheim Classics, and a hang-on back. That combination has worked out very, very good. If I was staying here longer, if I wasn't going to be selling off the 100, I would probably put a hang-on back on that tank as well, just to give it that extra backup, and again, to spread out the beneficial bacteria and minimize the shock during maintenance. And in the event of a failure, I've got that redundancy, right? Sometimes people will put filters on, like I had a message from somebody on Instagram a couple days ago. The aquarium is a year old. It continues to be cloudy. He can't figure it out. And his solution is he's adding more filtration. I don't think that's going to solve it. He's got some other issue. And what I would suggest, I'm going to be more in, I'm going to be more in a conversation with this individual. I'm going to look at possibly adding maybe suggesting a ChemiPure or a Purigen, something like that. Maybe a Clarity product, something that will, there are products you can add to the water that will bind with the fine particles so that they can then be picked up by the sponge. So there are different angles we can take. On a tank like that, I would use Purigen. On my tanks, like the one you see behind me here, I don't use chemical filtration anymore. It's stable. I have perfect water quality. It's crystal clear, and I have, and of course I have a big sump underneath here. And I used to have a Sun 704B, but when I took it off, I was getting good water tests, and I was getting good water clarity, so I never put it back on. I do have the Expert Matic hiding behind the corner over here, creating bubbles. I don't even know if you can see those bubbles, but it's creating bubbles and a lot of water movement and good filtration. So let's take a look here at what you folks are talking about on this subject. I'm going to take a peek at the chat, and if I missed a super chat while I was rambling, I apologize. I get going and I don't look at the chat because it's a little bit distracting. But I want to hear your comments. I want to hear your comments on can you overfilter? Is it true that you can't have too much filtration? I keep hearing that. And to me, it's like, well, yes and no. You can get into a point where you're just wasting electricity. You're just creating unnecessary. At the same time, I see the benefit of it. So I want to hear your comments on that. I'm scrolling through the chat now. And by the way, a shout out to Trent Walsh for getting up at 3 a.m. over in Australia, in Melbourne. Now you see it. Now that's a fan right there. That's a super fan, right? Thank you, buddy. I appreciate it. So let's see here. Trent, I think I already acknowledged your super chat. Thank you for that. And Tim Carter, thank you so much for that feedback. I'm glad you found the advice useful on that sump. And look, I'm not an expert. In my mind, when I think of experts, I think of maybe Corey over at the co-op. I'd probably consider Corey, and he's had continuous education. He's gone to classes, things of that nature. I would put him probably in the expert category. There are other folks out there who, through experience, have gained a tremendous amount of knowledge on the subject, right? John, Evan, Adam C., Kevin Green has a lot of data. GP has a tremendous amount of data. Candy certainly has a lot of data. There are a lot of folks out there that are very, very knowledgeable. I don't consider myself an expert, but I give you the advice that I feel has worked for me. So let's see here. HEPA Aquatics, speaking of filtrations, what's your view on substituting the filter floss with very fine sponges? I think you would get a very comparable result. I also think that over time you would save money, and so it's a better green solution, less for the landfill, because those sponges could just be taken out and rinsed in tank water or even faucet water if you're not counting on them for your beneficial bacteria. So I think it's a great solution. If you've heard of a company called Swiss Tropicals, they sell the Pour-It, right, the Matin sponges, Swiss Tropicals. They don't sponsor this channel. They don't give me any money, but they sell good quality sponges. You can go on eBay and search under pond sponges. You can go to my Amazon store, amazon.com/shop/Ben Ochart, and you'll see pond sponges. You can just cut them to shape, and they sell fine, medium, and coarse. And the fine ones are very fine. And I think it'd work great. Now, I like it especially in something like a canister where you don't have to tear it apart to pull it out. Like Pinky Floss, I was putting Pinky Floss on the top of my Fluval. I had to crack it open and pull it out and close it again. It's a bit of a chore, But certainly in a hang-on back, it'd be very easy. I have cartridges in the hang-on back in my 60-gallon, and those cartridges, I pull them out, put new Pinky in, put them back in. Takes 10, 15 minutes. Pinky Floss. So that's my take on that. Hanworth Homebrew. Hanworth, are you brewing your own beer? That's a big thing now, especially with COVID and with a lot of us with time on our hands. People are brewing their own beer. Homebrew can have as much media as you want. It'll only support as much bacteria as the load dictates. That's right. So you have only so much ammonia. Now, I've heard, and if you know about this, comment, that cichlids produce more ammonia than other fish because of just how they operate. If that's true, or is it a urban legend, let me know. But I've heard that they are in the category of super waste factories. You can have you can have 10 suns on that tank, and the beneficial bacteria is only going. That's right. You see, you folks already knew all this, and I've just been preaching to the choir here. You folks already knew. Tom adding, one of my aquariums turns over 16 times an hour. That's a lot of turnover. Now, Tom, are you taking into account that once you put the media in your filters and your canisters and hang-on backs, it is slowing down the water flow? Is that taken into account? sometimes by as much as 50%. If your Sun canister, for example, is rated at 500 gallons per hour, you're probably getting, depending on the media, you could be getting 250 gallons an hour, because it's going to get slow, and it'll slow down even more as it starts to get packed up with gunk. So your turnover starts to drop over time. Something to keep in mind, 16 times an hour, that's epic. That's a lot of turnover. Hey, T-Bone, good to see you, buddy. Hey, Chevy Fish, good to see you. I think it depends on the method of removal, how often, how much. Let's see. And of course, I also use power heads. As you know, I use power heads to help move waste to the intakes of the filters, to suspend the waste. In this tank behind me, I have back in this far corner here, I have a high door, 3rd generation, that does about 2,500 gallons an hour, and it's on a timer so that at night the fish can rest in calm water. But it runs all day. It runs from sun up till about 10 p.m. Trent Walsh, I shocked my Tropheus colony today. Not happy at all. Trent, keep an eye on them. Perhaps put some water conditioner in there over the next couple days. The water conditioner will not remove the ammonia or the nitrates or it'll just neutralize it. The tank will still have to go through the recycling process, so you may actually be getting a spike in ammonia. Test your water, and you may have to condition your water possibly every day, and maybe do some extra water changes until it stabilizes. Don't mess with the substrate, don't mess with the decor, don't mess with your filters. Leave all that alone. And this kind of gets us into that topic of one of the tanks I might be setting up in Nashville. I am tempted to set up a tank with plants, 3 inches to 5 inches of substrate, and only sponges in the filters. And see if I can get a tank that will give me a full cycle. And by using the substrate, which I wouldn't touch, I'd use sand, and I would only very lightly vacuum the surface, but I would be using power heads to move waste into the intakes like I do with the 100. And I would see if I could create in that sand an anaerobic bacteria colony in the deep parts of the undisturbed sand. Now, there is a urban legend, a wives' tale. Is that what you call it? A wives' tale? That's been circulating around the hobby, that if you do that, you will have a gas release that will kill your fish. I've done some research on that and have discovered that that is an urban legend. And undisturbed sand will not release a gas that will kill your fish. So keep that in mind. So I'm thinking of setting up a tank, 3 inches of substrate, some plants, and only sponges in perhaps 1 filter, maybe a hang-on back, maybe 1 canister. We'll see, and see if I can actually get a complete cycle. I might also take this tank with me. We'll see. There's a possibility I might, and I will fill the media compartment entirely with biohome, and see if I can get the biohome as discussed by the pond guru. If I can get the right amount of biohome with no chemical filtration to actually give me a tank that completely cycles. And by full cycle, we mean it goes from ammonia to nitrite to nitrate, and then that nitrate converts back, and you end up with 0, 0, 0, right? Or 0, 0 and like 5 nitrate. without having to do a water change. We'll see. I mean, I think we need that experiment. Those experiments are talked about. I think it needs to be done. And perhaps in a combination with plants, it can be brought about. Now, somebody said interesting, someone made an interesting comment to me, and this person seemed like they were knowledgeable, had some credentials. They said that plants don't consume nitrates. That also is a wives' tale or an urban legend. What plants consume is ammonia. That is what they're consuming. If you know about this, if you have researched it and studied it and know about this and perhaps are an expert in aquaponics, I'd like to hear it from you as well. Tell me, is that true? They consume ammonia, and so naturally it reduces your nitrates because, right, you don't have the ammonia converting into nitrate. And so what happens then is you have a nitrate reduction in the tank, and people go, hey, look, my plants are eating my nitrates, when the truth is your plants are eating your ammonia. So then someone goes and adds nitrates to the tank, and their plants might not do as well so anyway, interesting topic, something I'm going to have to learn about if I'm going to get into planted tanks when I get to Nashville. I'd love to have some planted tanks. I'm seeing some beautiful planted tanks out of Europe, out of the Orient, right, out of Japan and China, Asia. You see these examples of gorgeous planted globes and, controlled duckweed and, in discs and all kinds of crazy stuff. So I'm going to really sort of expand out. I'm still going to be the cichlid dude, right? I don't want to give that up. I love my cichlids. All right, let's see here. Trent, keep an eye on those Tropheus. My experience with Tropheus is that they are a sensitive fish. They're not as hardy, let's say, as your Lake Malawi haps. So keep a close eye on them, and I really hope they make it. Let's see here. John Larson, change the water on Monday, clean filters on Thursday, vacuum gravel monthly, clean glass as needed, front only. Yeah, that's a workable, alternating that is disrupting your beneficial bacteria a lot less. And the less you can disturb that, the better. And the more we can acknowledge that beneficial bacteria exists, and in some cases might even exist in a greater, more hardy and greater quantity inside your tank, in the substrate, than even in your filters. So keep that in mind. And I know people that sell expensive filter media hate when I say that, and it's got to be said. Greg P., that's exactly what I'm talking about, Greg. 2 FX6s on my 125 1K valve. So glad I had the second one. You got to have that backup. And for some of us, we don't have the budget. We don't have the budget. We don't have the money to have a spare heater. We don't have the money to have a spare canister. We don't have extra. I get it. And when the emergency comes, and some of us have been lucky, knock on wood, but eventually that emergency does come for all of us at some point. You got to have that backup, some kind of a backup. If you have a fluval canister filter, I suggest you have an extra top valve, output-input valve. Buy one of those and buy a purge valve. And it wouldn't be a bad idea to have a few extra O-rings. Have those, just have them in the closet, because at some point, and if you talk to enough fluval owners, you'll see that not everybody, but at some point, one of those valves is going to start a slow leak on you, and you're not going to, you can put a towel under it, and like I did, and a cup, but you're going to have to eventually change out that valve, So get an output valve, get an input valve, and get a purge valve, and put them somewhere. It's a lot less expensive than having to have a second canister. Certainly, if the motor burns out, you're out of luck. I mean, what are you going to do? You got to order a new motor from Fluval, and that's going to be very expensive, or you're going to have to get a new canister. By the way, I know that the big, your big stores like your PetSmart, Petco, especially if you belong to their clubs like the Treats program, they give you I'll send you a coupon for 25% off. Then you walk in and they have a Fluval on sale for an FX6 for $250. You get 25% off of that. You walk out with an FX6 for about $200. That's not a bad deal. That's not a bad deal. Or you can buy two 704Bs, Sunshine 704Bs. So, all right, let's look at the chat here. Let's see here. Someone is using kitty litter, fluorite red with about 3 inches of cichlid sand over that, starting to reduce nitrates after about 4 months. The Kevin Novak technique, and that's metal and French fries. Very, very interesting. I wouldn't think of kitty litter, but hey, I've even thought of putting a bed of Biohome Ultimate. Put some Biohome Ultimate under there, and then some gravel over it. Something. I mean, there's different ways to go. Kitty litter, that would be pretty inexpensive, I imagine. Chuck Stefan, what you want is you want an area where there isn't air circulate. You want a very low oxygen area, because what that's going to do is promote the growth of what is called anaerobic bacteria, and that's the bacteria that is going to be using nitrate as a nutrient and converting it into a harmless substance, or gassing it off into something harmless. So you wouldn't necessarily want oxygen. You wouldn't want oxygen down there. It would defeat the purpose of that deep substrate, which is you're creating a oxygen deprived zone, right? An anaerobic zone that is going to help to bring about what you're looking for. Aquaballs is in the house. Hey, Aquaballs. Hope you're doing well, my friend. And hello to your family and your children. Let's see here. Looks like you got into a discussion on Anubias. I love Anubias. I love the way they look. You can attach them to your decor with super glue. Let them sit for 4 or 5 hours. Just mist the plants. If you just mist them, that's all you have to do. They don't have to be in the water. Just mist them. Apparently, that's how plant, like the way they sell them, for example, in China and stuff. They have big aquatic plants. They just keep them in a mister. So, and it'll dry. The super glue will dry, and then it's safe to put into your tank. I had no problems with super glue. So, and once they get attached to driftwood, then they start to spread and cover up the driftwood. You'll end up with just a beautiful setup with the Anubias. I love Anubias. They're very hardy, and I think Rachel O'Leary talked about how if they stop growing, trim the roots, not the rhizome, not the real thick root at the bottom, just the long thin hairs. Trim those back, and you'll get more growth on top. Just a tip on Anubias. Edward Tomazuki. Boy, am I butchering your name. I'm just going to call you Ed. Hey, Ed, since you're doing urban legends, why is it you can't use an undergraduate, you mean under gravel filter on a planted Man, I hate spell checker. The way it just changes your words on a planted tank. They say the plants won't grow properly. Can't find. I've heard the opposite. I've heard some old school fish keepers talk about how they had wonderful plants when they had under gravel filters that was pulling the waste down, where the plants could then, consume it, right? Get the nutrients out of it. So I've heard the other side of that you want that is actually a good filter system for that. And things evolve, and then they kind of go back. There are some folks that are actually setting up under gravel filters. So because it turns out they were actually pretty good in a lot of ways. We kind of go round and round, and we look at a plain sponge filter, a plain old sponge filter. You can put it in a tank. You can disguise it with a few plants around it, as long as you don't block too much. You want the waste to get to it. But a sponge filter is great. Beneficial bacteria, keeps it, aerates, gives you oxygen, simple, inexpensive. So, we get fancy, and then we get back to basics. Now, if you really want to see something complicated, go on to some of the reef tank websites and look at the setups. Go to Inventory King. Go check out Paul, the Inventory King, who seems to be shifting away from cichlids and getting more into saltwater, and he's got some beautiful setups. My God. I mean, you've got like color-coded plumbing, and you have very regulated doping, like systems that drop a drop of this and a drop of that every 6 hours, every 2 hours. Anyway, he's got some beautiful corals. And now what that technology does is eventually the simpler parts of that technology, like algae scrubbers and things of that nature, sumps for that matter, is making its way over into the freshwater community. And I like that. So the saltwater folks are pushing the edge with technology, and then that's working its way into what is affordable and usable by us in the freshwater community. So, my hat's off to the saltwater, to the salties out there, because my God, they really push the envelope. So, with that being said, again, for those of you who joined a little bit late, I am going to be very, very involved in moving. So I have cut back my video schedule to a couple of videos a week. There will be one out tomorrow and one out Wednesday. And then, of course, the live stream. There will be a Saturday or two without a live stream during my move. I will be getting some footage probably when I stop at the Cichlid Shack. And maybe a couple other locations along the way. I mean, if you folks saw that map that I posted, let's see here. This is the full trip. If you know of a fish store along that journey that you think I should visit while we're driving, my youngest daughter, myself, and 2 beagles. I'm going to be taking the dogs. So if you know of a fish store along that journey that you think I should stop at, let me know, and I will go ahead and make a point of stopping there and coordinating with the shop and making a stop. So that being said, I want to thank all of you for being a part of today's live stream. And don't forget to hit that bell and subscribe if you haven't already. Follow us on Facebook. If you're a Facebook group member, Cunningham Cichlids, Josh Cunningham, has just extended a discount to the members of the Ben O' Cichlid Facebook group. 15% off for group members. You will need the code. Come to the group Ben O' Cichlid. Get your 15% off code for Cunningham Cichlids. We also have codes for Super Cichlids, who sponsors our monthly banner contest. We also have codes for Elite Cichlids, and I believe also the Cichlid Shack. I think we have a code for Cichlid Shack. If we don't, we should. James, if you're listening. Follow me on Instagram for behind the scenes things that I don't post anywhere else. And that's it for me, my friends. You are very appreciated, and I hope to see you next Saturday. Thank you, Candy, GP, Kevin, and moderators. You're the best. Thank you to my super chatters. You folks rock. See you next week. Bye-bye.